You're listening to the My Simplified Life podcast, and this is episode number 82. Welcome to the My Simplified Life podcast, a place where you will learn that your past and even your present don't define your future. Regardless of what stage of life you're in, I want you to feel inspired and encouraged to pursue your dreams, simplify your life, and start taking action today. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac, and I'm excited to share my stories and life lessons with you while taking you on my own journey. This is My Simplified Life. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac. I have a secret for you. You can be the most powerful woman in the room. It all starts with a great strike method, networking, and absolute confidence. But don't take it from me. Take it from the most powerful woman in the room, the Michael Jordan of the auction world, a woman who shares the stage with A-list celebrities and helps charities raise more money than they could even imagine. Lydia Fenet joins me today to talk about how she found her confidence and talent, created not only a career for herself, but an entire new department for Christie's auction house. She's a mom of 3 who works full-time during the day, manages to spend quality time with her kids, and do benefit auctions at night. It's not just about her career, though. We're talking about the lessons we've both learned from corporate life in our 20s, what changed when we became moms, and the need for empowering each other in order for every single one of us to become the most powerful woman in the room. Hi, Lydia.
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
I am so good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Oh, thank you. It is my pleasure and honor. I am so excited to get to talk to you one-on-one since I got to be on the one side of hearing you speak with business chicks. And I was like, oh, I need to have a one-on-one with this woman, please.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It's always fun to get an invitation to join someone on a podcast.
Well, and it was something that I'll have you introduce yourself in a second. But the reason that I invited you too is because you had said in your talk that, you know, if you want to email someone, you have like this urge, you should just do it and reach out to people. And we'll talk about network or die. But in that moment, I went, I'm going to find her email and I'm going to send her one.
I love it. I'm so glad you did. And you're not the only one. Honestly, I know I say that, but I really mean it. I enjoy meeting people. And if you want to email me or call me or send me a DM over Instagram, I'm always up for it.
I love it. So can you take a moment now before we dive all the way in and we're 30 minutes in and everyone's like, who is this woman? Can you please introduce yourself to everyone?
Sure. My name is Lydia Fenet. I am the author of a book called The Most Powerful Woman in the Room Is You. And I'm also an auctioneer at Christie's Auction House where I've worked for 2 decades.
I love it. And I gave you a shout out over the weekend because it was National Auctioneers Day.
Oh,
and I think a lot of people, when we think of auctioneers, we think kind of like the cattle, it goes so quickly off their tongue and, it's that kind of a thing, but you're not that kind of an auctioneer.
No,
Can you explain what you are for everybody who doesn't know? Because I've also had people go, what's Christie's?
I know. Well, it's funny. I never heard of Christie's before I read an article about them in college. So it wasn't a place that was familiar to me either. So 2 things. So Christie's Auction House is an auction house where we sell everything from museum quality works, like if you've heard of Picasso or Monet or Manet, all of those works have been sold at Christie's either to museums or to private collections. But we sell everything. We sell wine, we sell jewelry. In fact, we have 80 different specialist departments. And in order to do that, we use auctioneers. So there are people who stand up on what we call a rostrum, but it's basically just a podium. We stand on a podium with a gavel, we slam the gavel down, and we sell whatever they give us to sell. I specialize in charity auctions, which means that especially in the US, where there is a very robust charity gala scene, I spend the bulk of my evenings during peak gala season raising money for nonprofits by standing on stage and essentially selling a trip or the opportunity to have a movie walk-on role or all of these different amazing opportunities that boards put together in order to raise money for nonprofits.
I think what you do is fascinating. There was a point in the book that I went, oh, I think I missed my calling. I want to be a benefit auctioneer. And the reason I think was because you mentioned in your book that there was kind of this awakening for you where you said, I'm going on stage and I'm being kind of the English auctioneer male version who's kind of stuffy and, to the point. And then you realize that's not me.
Absolutely. And I think that has happened probably to so many of us over our lives, where you don't see anyone who looks like you doing something that you want to do. And so you think that you shouldn't be doing it. When I think the biggest lesson I learned, and I wrote about this in the book, was that it's really more about you taking the initiative to make it your own thing. Just because it's done one way doesn't mean that's the only way it can be done. And that was really the approach I took to benefit auctioneering. But it takes confidence, and it takes the ability to feel confident in yourself, to put yourself outside of that box that's been created and say, there's a different way to do this. It's not good or bad. It's just different.
And you do a training program where I think it's kind of like you test people. And I kept thinking to myself, what would I say if she called on me? What story would I tell? Oh my goodness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so fun. I mean, I'd say it's a little bit like Survivor. We put 20 people, volunteer to come from Christie's who work in the company into a room for 4 days. And over the course of 4 days, we train them we start out by asking them to just speak in public. And we really do this, and we ask them really to tell a story in about 2 to 3 minutes. We do this to figure out who is able to actually speak in public, because speaking in public is one thing. Speaking in public during an auction where you don't really have a script and you're using the audience to bounce off of, and you have to be confident enough to speak over people who are going to talk no matter what you do, takes a certain level of confidence on stage. And so very quickly you can see people who either fall apart immediately, or other people who can hold their own. They just need to be trained up.
Absolutely. And I know that, you're doing this after a dinner's been served, after drinks have been served. I used to be a chair for the California Schedulers and Dispatchers Association, which is corporate aviation related. And we would do a quarterly event and have a speaker go up after dinner, after drinks, and nobody paid attention.
No, ever.
So, and unfortunately, the speakers, we couldn't really rely on them to manage it. So we just changed the format where you had to get up and leave your table and come sit stadium style to listen.
Yes. I love it. It's such a good idea.
That was our answer to the inebriated people.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And the funny thing is, you realize over time, and the part that is so unnerving is when you get up there for, in my case, it was sort of the first 100 auctions that I took. And I just realized that they were never really going to stop talking, because especially for an auction that things are going to sell for thousands of dollars, there's so few people in an audience who can actually bid on them. So what I realized as the auctioneer is that it wasn't really about entertaining the people who were going to bid. It was about entertaining the audience. And so I had to make it a bigger moment where I was calling out people who weren't even bidding. I was making jokes about things that were happening in the room that weren't necessarily about the auction itself. Or in addition to that, I was also just commenting on different things. And I apologize, by the way, for the background noise, but I live in New York City, so there's always some kind of siren going off. But, I do think that that's such a critical part of learning to be not only an auctioneer, but to be a good public speaker, is to get comfortable with, a siren going off in the middle of your talk, and understand that it's okay, things happen. As long as you don't pretend they don't happen, then a lot of times people feel a lot more comfortable because of it.
Or like when Matt Damon calls you Lindsay instead of Lydia.
Right. When Matt Damon calls you Lindsay, and then you have to correct him because you can't let everyone think that your name is Lindsay, obviously.
I love that. I love that you called him out. Everybody needs to read the book so you can get to the Matt Damon story, because I'm a huge fan. I would have been like, just like you, yay, Matt Damon.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
You stood up to him and was like, hey, buddy, this is my job. And FYI, that's not my name.
Exactly. And I think that that's the point in the book. He was so great and so funny. And I tell that story just to illustrate that no one is ever above you in life. It doesn't matter what platform they have, what distinction they have, what honor they have received. They deserve respect for what they've done. But if they call you the wrong name, you can say that that's not your name, and that's okay. My dad always says everyone puts their boots on the same way in the morning.
Exactly.
Just never forget that as it pertains to business or even life.
And I think that in talking about this story with Matt, there's also this perception for people of, celebrities are these other people. We put them up on this pedestal. But in my past life, I worked with a lot of celebrities and stood next to them the way you do on a stage. And they're just regular people. And you also mentioned in the book how the actors kind of shy away from being on the stage because they don't have a script. And I found that's absolutely the truth, that the bigger actor they are, the biggest one that surprised me in my life was Sean Penn, because I think he's such an amazing actor. But when you are right next to him, he's very quiet. He's very reserved.
Yes. Yes. And I think a lot of them they're actors. They're not necessarily, doesn't mean that they're gregarious personalities like they might be in a movie. They're just people. And that goes to any field. People do that about sports figures or the CEO of a company, just anyone that they perceive to be successful. I think a lot of times it makes people feel as if they can't approach them or talk to them. And, that's kind of what I said in my book. It's like, you should call me or email me because I want to get to know people. That's why I wrote a book. That's why I do speaking. And that's why I am always on Instagram, sort of, just talking about things that come to me, because that's what I've chosen to do with my life. And therefore I want that information back. And I think a lot of people who are public figures, they sort of choose the way they want to be seen, but they're just people.
Exactly. And something that we all need to remember, because as a podcast host, I get a lot of other people go, well, how did you get, Emma Isaacs on your show? How did you, get these larger names? I'm like, I asked. I reached out and I asked. I created a relationship. And that's really what your book is all about, and how you've come along in your career. Let's talk about it, because you didn't just overnight happen to be an auctioneer at Christie's working with celebrities.
Yes, that is true. That is true. It took a lot of practice. That's probably the best way that I can say it. I started out as a 24-year-old. I had been working the company for 3 years. And at that time, they only had auctioneers who had been at the company for over 10 years. They were all officers in the company. But there was a year where a lot of the charity auctioneers, because charity auctions always take place late in the evening, had to miss auctions. They missed flights. They had to call in sick. They had children who were sick and couldn't go, or there were just all of these issues. And so they decided that the pool of charity auctioneers was not large enough. They opened it up to the entire company. And I had seen these charity galas. I'd gone as a volunteer to help the auctioneer. You sort of stand near the tables in the room, and when the auctioneer can't see someone, you yell, "Bidding, sir," so that, the auctioneer knows that there's someone bidding in the general vicinity where you're standing. And I'd seen it happen time and time again, and I just thought, this just looks so amazing. Like, I want to do that. I feel like I could be really good at that. And so, I took my 24-year-old self downstairs to this room of 20 people. And over 4 days, they kept whittling us down. And then the last day, they called each of us into the office, and 4 of us passed, 3 of whom were guys. Most of them were at least 10 years older than me. And it was just a really interesting thing, because the feedback that I received was, we don't really know what to do with you because you don't really fit the mold, but there is something that we like about you. So we'll just give you the auctions that nobody else wants to take. And I was 24. So I thought that was the greatest thing I'd ever heard in my life. And so thus became the next sort of 8 or 9 years of my life, which almost every evening after work, I would throw on a cocktail dress, something that I kept on a hanger behind my door, and trot myself off to all the event venues in New York City and take these charity auctions. But the funny thing about taking so many auctions is it gave me practice with every possible thing that could go wrong. So, when someone says, well, we forgot to get the microphone. I mean, the first time it happened to me, my heart sank and I almost died. There were 300 people in the room. What I realize now, because this happened to me a couple of years ago, the microphone went out, and I said to the crowd, how could you possibly speak right now? I'm an auctioneer without a microphone. You have to listen to me. You must. And they all did, and then when I finally got the microphone, everybody cheered. And I realized those moments make it fun for the audience. It's different. And I always say, like, the bigger the problem, the bigger the joke, Yeah.
So, and nobody wants to see you fail.
Nobody wants to see you fail. I mean, there's nothing worse than watching a speaker or someone get on stage who really just can't pull it together. Their voice is shaking, they're bright red, all of those things. And so it's absolutely true that when you get on stage, the one thing you should think about more than anything is every single person out there wants you to have a good performance. No one likes a bad speaker.
No, No, absolutely not. There's two parts of your book that I'm like, my mind is just spinning with so many questions and like, oh, let's talk about this. So if I'm all over the place, that's why. One thing that you said, and since you just started out that you mentioned you were 24 when you started, is towards the end of the book, how you could get into an argument or have, some sort of miscommunication, and you went to a boss one day and the boss had said to you, like, one argument or whatever, I understand in a day. If there's two or more, then maybe you need to look at yourself. And just how now that, you're in your 40s, I'm hitting 40 this year, being moms, being, career women, there comes a point in time where we just don't have time for that stuff.
Totally.
And it really resonated with me because in my 20s, I was the youngest salesperson for the corporation that I worked for to be hired. And they were skeptical of like, we got this young 20-something, what's she going to do? And I remember that there was this whole gossipy, who's doing what type of thing. And then once I got married, had kids, and really actually had a life of my own, it was like, I don't have time for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a gift in many ways because, not only was I listening to the gossip of my 20s, I was certainly involved in it. I mean, I loved the water cooler gossip. And I remember coming back from maternity leave with my first child and realizing how much time I spent sitting in people's offices talking about things that had nothing to do with work. I mean, really hours of my day that were just spent chatting with people about things that had nothing to do with what we were supposed to be doing at work. And all of a sudden, when I had a child at home that I needed to nurse, that hour and a half, 2 hours over the course of the day became a quick 5 minutes. How are you doing? Great. Glad to see everything's going well. Anything else you want to talk about? No. Okay, perfect. I'm going to head out of the door. And I became really, really strict about what time I left the office to make sure that I could be home for my first child and then second and third. And especially because I was going back on stage, I started pushing it back even a little bit earlier to make sure that I could be home, do a bath, do dinner, spend time with them, read books. And then by the time I went out, I didn't feel that horrible guilt that, you feel when you're just burning the candle at both ends. And I think that was always really important for me. The gossip just disappeared because there was no time for it anymore. And I think that helps you in your career too.
I think that's such an important lesson for anyone listening, but especially if you're in your 20s. We've both been through it and we're testifying to this. So I hope it resonates with somebody. And, I wish that we could be more conscious of it before we went and we had kids, and that we could really protect that space and time before we realize that, it takes a child and, a family to raise in order for us to disassociate with that. And I love in the book that you also give examples of here's what you can do. Don't go in the office or the cubicle.
Totally. Absolutely. Prop yourself by the door. Just give a quick hello. It's honestly the best piece of advice because you always know the people who they come into your office and they sit down and you're just sitting there being like, oh gosh, please, please. I mean, obviously we're just speaking during COVID, so we're not seeing this so much right now, but definitely there were days where I'm like, oh gosh. So I just started to sort of pop into their office first and preempt it. And again, a quick 5 minutes. How's everything going? You control when you leave. And I think that's so important when you're trying to run against a schedule, especially a family schedule.
Absolutely. Let's talk about your strike method, because I secretly was hoping that you would start off the show with your gavel to get everyone's attention.
I definitely have it if you need it.
If you have to go back and read my Instagram post, because I said I secretly hope she starts the show off with the gavel.
Well, I can do it at any point that you need.
I'll have that cut out and put it at the front.
Perfect. The strike method really came because I was thinking about the best way to bring people into the world as I see it from the auctioneering perspective. And for me, that's really those 10 seconds before I go on stage. The adrenaline is coursing through my body. I'm looking out at 1,000+ people staring up at a screen and sort of an empty podium in the middle of the room that I'm supposed to be walking towards over the course of the next 10 seconds. And there's just so much energy, right, that's coming at that point. And I think that is where most people crumble. That's the moment that takes you from being a really good public speaker to the person who freezes and can't speak for the first minute that they're on stage. And I wanted to bring people into that motion of walking to that podium, putting down my notes, looking up at the crowd, and then slamming down my gavel as hard as I could, because that for me is the moment that I transform from, Lydia, the mom of 3 who's been sitting at a table watching this speech, to Lydia, the person who's about to take over the stage and be the auctioneer who's going to raise money for this nonprofit. And the strike method for me is basically the moving through that transformation that all of us need to have when we are speaking or giving a presentation, from somebody who is nervous and introverted and kind of freaking out to the person who exudes confidence and feels in control of what's coming out of their mouth, in the same way that a professional athlete might have their sort of, thing that they do before they go on a basketball court, or the thing that they do before they go, Michael Phelps does that thing with his arms every time he's about to go swimming, where he sort of swings them up and down. And he's like, it's not me warming up. That's my mantra. That's my strike method. He didn't say that, but I'll put the words in his mouth. So I would say that, anytime you have a moment where you are going to get nervous, think about what you can do physically to really help yourself move from that motion of fear and nerves and adrenaline, and push it into a moment of strength and calm and laser focus. And once you've figured out what that strike method is, the next thing you need to do is make sure that you've memorized your first opening line, or maybe the first 2 lines, because you just want to get far enough into your speech that the motion is with you at that point. If you know what you're going to say after you walk in, and for me, it's the gavel 3 times. For other people, it's sort of hitting underneath the table 3 times, or, clenching their fists, or whatever it is. Whatever you say next is just as important, because that is what gets a crowd onto your side. That is when they think, oh, this person is going to be a good speaker and I'm going to watch, not, oh God, here we go again. This person is about to fall apart.
Right. I love the book because you hit on so many different facets of what it really does take to be the most powerful woman in the room. And you say it's not rocket science, because it's not. We talk about networking and relationships and the importance of that. Let's talk about that for a bit, because I also love how you mentioned that you met, I'm going to call her your rival.
Yes. My rival, Courtney. She loves her role in my book. It's so funny. Networking to me is just one of those things that so many people hate. And I don't ever want to say anything but good things about it, because I just see it as the opportunity to meet new people, to expand your network, and to grow your business free. And how many things in our life can we say, oh, that's something that I could do to enhance my life. It's something I could do to grow my business, and it's free. So I would say to anyone who is interested in understanding more about networking, there are a couple of things that you really want to think about. Networking is not just relegated to your business, right? It's not just your business that it needs to be networked. Your network is every person you've ever met over the course of your entire life. It really sort of, if you were to map it out, is almost like a spider web. So every person you've met has met someone else, and therefore your network to them is their network to you. And how you grow that network is constantly being in touch with people over the course of a year, over the course of 2 years, to let them know where you are, to understand where they are, and then just keeping in touch. And then any opportunity you have to meet new people, to go to something where there are going to be people that might be new to your circle, be the person who is constantly introducing yourself to other people. Don't be the person who stands by the bar and never meets anyone. Be the person who turns around and shakes hands with people, or, when we're not in a COVID situation. Reach out to people on LinkedIn that you're interested in. DM people on Instagram. I promise you will find that there are people who are a lot more willing to meet you than you would ever think. And, in the book, I talk with Courtney about starting this networking breakfast, because we both lived in New York City. At that point, I think we'd lived in New York for over 10 years. And we were having a conversation, and we kept bringing up the names of women, talking about how great they were. With the other person would sort of say, I've never met that person, which I know sounds funny in New York because it's a huge city, but at some point things start to feel very small town. Mm-hmm. And so we put together this breakfast, this networking breakfast. And the only question we asked was, what are you working on? And when we sat down with this group of 5 women she didn't know and 5 women I didn't know, all of a sudden, 2 hours later, we were all still talking. And it turned out that these 12 people actually had a lot in common that you would never have thought. And it wasn't work related. It wasn't just family related. It was all of those things combined. And that to me is really the illustration of networking. It's understanding who the person is, before you understand what they do. And once you know that, you can always go back to them because you've connected on a human level. And that's really what networking is about.
Oh, I love that. That was the sound bite for the entire episode. That was perfectly said. Sorry. You also touch on the lost art form of the written note card.
Yes. Oh, God.
I'm a stationery freak. I love it. My husband the other day is like, I need a blank happy birthday card. Are you going to the store? I go, I have them right here, my friend. I always have stationery on hand.
Yes, me too. Me too. I love thank you notes.
And the gal who wrote to you after her internship at Christie's and just continued to write to you, she ultimately got the job.
Yes, exactly. And not only just got the job, but was top of mind because of those thank you notes. I mean, she wrote every single month, every 6 weeks, ever since her summer internship for an entire year. And guess what? When someone came in to quit, there were her thank you notes piled up in front of me. And I just kept thinking she would be perfect for that job. But what if she hadn't done that? What if the last time I had seen her was that summer before where I had said, it was so nice to meet you. Goodbye. And so I cannot stress enough the importance and the impact of a really well thought out and interesting thank you note. I often say I can count on one hand my friends who write really good thank you notes. It's because I notice great stationery, great turn of phrase. It's not thank you very much for having me over. It's the wine, the dinner, the food. What a blast. Here's a joke. This is what I was thinking. It's supposed to be a letter thanking you, not a formulaic thing you have to do.
It's that human touch that you just mentioned.
Exactly.
So what's the importance for every woman to be the most powerful woman in the room?
To believe in yourself and to know that no matter what anyone says around you, that as long as you are confident in who you are, you may hear what they say, but you are driven by what's inside of you and your vision and what you feel and what you think. And you can block out the outside noise. And I think that ultimately is what makes you powerful.
I love it. I'm speechless. I love how that just rolled right off your tongue. You were ready for that one.
I know. I really, truly believe it. Someone once asked me pretty early on after the book was published, when did you become the most powerful woman in the room? And I said, when I wrote a book called The Most Powerful Woman in the Room Is You, made it hot pink and then sold it, around the world. And she was sort of said, you weren't always powerful. And I said, no, I think I had imposter syndrome just like anyone else. I didn't know that I was going to become the person who spoke so confidently about it. But I think when I realized how much power comes when you really feel it, it becomes intoxicating because you really don't care what other people think because you're following your own vision and your own dreams. And there's something so empowering in that in life.
Absolutely. I think for me, that came after having kids.
Yes.
It really did. There was something that changed literally within the month of my first child where I no more BS, not taking nothing from no one. This is who I am.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it comes to us at different times. I mean, all of us go through it. Some people never do. Some people will seek it forever. And I've also seen a lot of people who get in their own way. They constantly doubt everything that they say. They're their own worst enemy. And, I've said to so many people before who've asked me, why do you share all of this? Like, why don't you just do it on your own? And I truly think it's such an interesting question because, first of all, just because I do it doesn't mean that somebody sees what I do and can replicate it. That's number one. But two, like, why does it matter? They're on their own journey, right? So, and there are people that you can give every toolbox to and everything that you would want for them in life, and they can never see it. And so those are the people that I want to read the book and feel the way that I feel or that you feel, having felt that, having kids, and then move through that and living that in your own life. Like, that's what I want everyone to feel, because that's just a happier existence.
Yeah. And speaking of having kids, you also say in the book, and I liked this, appreciated it, that, this isn't just for career women. If your career is being a mom and you're staying at home, then you're the most powerful woman in the room at your home, and you need to, run it like a boss.
Absolutely. And your vision and your want of life is as important as anyone else's. And, I've had so many people ask me, how do you have it all, Lydia? You have it all. I've heard that so many times. You have it all. I mean, I hope you're laughing, Michelle, when I hear that. Oh, I have it all, do I? I think it's a funny thing because I think everyone's all is so different. How can you say that? You don't know what my all is. Maybe my all was that I was never going to have kids and this all just happened and this wasn't what I wanted at all. But I did not see it like that. I see my all as having a fulfilling career, having children who I have a good relationship with, who I truly want to be good citizens of this world, being a good daughter and being a good friend. Those are my priorities in my life. And if all of those are, going well, then yeah, that day I do feel like I have it all. But let's be honest, like that's not every single day of my life for sure. And that may also make somebody else feel sick to think about any of those things, any combination of those things. You could be an introvert who wants to live in the country and, you want one llama and that is what you want out of your life. And that is your all. And if that's your all and you have that, then you have reached the place that is going to make you powerful. So I think that it's so important for each of us to really put pencil to paper and figure out what our all is and then make the changes to make sure that you're happy, because happiness really is having it all.
Yeah. And I love also that, you created this position that you're now in at Christie's.
Yes.
You decided that there was more to offer of yourself, of Christie's, and you put it pen to paper, as you said, and created this entire department that you now run.
Yes.
So it really is. You are proof in the pudding of, put your mind to it. You can get it done, and you can be married, and you can have 3 children, and you can work a full-time job and a nighttime job.
Yeah, you can have a lot of different avenues in your life for sure. Yeah, I'm always puzzled by people who start out with the I could never, or, when I was pregnant with my first child, you're not going to be able to do your job and the charity auctions at night, Lydia. You just won't. Which, of course, made me think, watch me.
Oh, I'm the same way. Yeah. Want to bet?
Oh, really? Okay. Well, we'll see. We'll see about that with a smile on my face. We'll see about that. But I really do. I find it such an interesting thing. Why not be supportive in that moment? Why not say, yes, do it, try it. Just stop when you can't do it anymore, or, finish it when the tape runs out. But why stop it before that? And I think that as long as we're all living, again, moving towards our all, whatever that looks like, but also content with the fact that there are going to be good days and there are going to be bad days. There are going to be moments where we feel like we are wildly successful, and there are going to be moments when we feel like everything is failing, and it's all part of the journey. And we're all on it in our own way and together. So, network with the people who are going to lift you up, keep those people close to you. And just remember that at the end of the day, what you want in your life is what you're aiming towards, not what other people think about what you want in your life.
That's perfection. You've got some golden gems, my friend.
No, thank you.
Where can everybody find you and your book, The Most Powerful Woman in the Room Is You?
Well, I have a website, www.lydiafenet.com, where I have basically all the information about my book and speaking and auctions. You can always find me on Instagram at Lydia Fenet. It's how I keep my parents updated about what I'm doing on a daily basis, sometimes an hourly basis. But those are really the 2 best ways to find me.
Thank you so much. I really love talking to you over my cup of tea. If you guys read the book, then you'll know she drinks tea too. So
Absolutely, I do. Absolutely. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. No matter what it is you do or want to do, I want you to know that you have the power in you to do it. Start networking, create your own strike method, stand up for yourself and what you deserve. Create your roadmap to becoming the most powerful woman in the room, because I know you can. I loved reading Lydia's book and getting to talk to her because she's truly created the life and career that she wanted. She created her own future, and that's something we all need to do. Find that confidence and go after what you want. I'm speaking to you as much as I'm speaking to myself. Carve out time to brainstorm ideas and imagine what kind of life you want, what job you want to do, what problem you want to solve, and then create a plan of action. Hold yourself accountable and give yourself what you deserve. As always, my friends, stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, and become the most powerful woman in the room.